festivals, do we carry on? Do we carry on celebrating? Yes, we do. We celebrate life. We celebrate the story of light. The story is about light. It's the story of the miracle with when they cleansed the temple. They only found enough oil to burn for one day, and it burned for 8 days. So
Wow.
this is the festival of light over darkness.
And by the way, Logan is saying that the son had been investigated, the jihadi son had been investigated, tied to a terrorist group in Australia. So as always, the authorities knew who these guys were. They always do. They always do. They always do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even more so, the prime minister and the security, they need to be held accountable for
100%.
this.
Aaron Lavarco, our reporter on the ground, brought to you by our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com.
Folks, we had a guest change at the last minute due to a family emergency, and we appreciate David helping us out because this is right in his wheelhouse. Well, man, I love that tweet. But is it realistic to have the expectations that the national security document actually lays out? It does lay those things out pretty clearly.
Yeah, this is an outstanding piece of work, national security strategy, which was principally authored, of course, by someone we both admire, Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Elbridge Colby. And he was the principal co-author of really, I think, both of Trump's national security strategies. And it's interesting to see how his thinking and Trump's thinking have moved. The first strategy, I think, maybe was had a more neocon influence in terms of great power competition. This one is very America First focus. It focuses on hemispheric defense. I've been arguing, I think, since 2009 or thereabouts, that the U.S. should abandon its pretense to be a global superpower and become a hemispheric superpower with a nuclear arsenal and missile defense system second to none. And this moves us farther in that direction. And I have been arguing for regime change in communist Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Not sure, I think the timing and how that happens is very much up to debate in terms of is this the right time to do so. But Trump is certainly moving or executing the strategy in Venezuela in sync with his policy. In terms of NATO, the policy talks about essentially making them principally responsible for conventional military defense of Europe by 2027. And that suggests that President Trump may, in fact, be serious about his thinking of perhaps changing the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe from a U.S. general to a British, French, or even German commanding general. And presumably that might be done in sync with the U.S. leaving the military command structure of NATO, much as France did in 1966, while remaining a formal member of NATO in terms of the political alliance structure, and also providing continuing to provide naval support principally, and of course our nuclear umbrella. And those ideas are really in sync with a follow-up essentially to Sumatra Mitra's so-called dormant NATO proposal, which he of course is a senior editor of the American Conservative magazine, and also Vice President J.D. Vance has he's really a real good strategic thinker, much more of a conservative ideologue than the president. And we see his fingerprints on this as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. What are your thoughts on if we go that far, the concept of extended deterrence from a nuclear deterrence perspective? NATO's extended deterrence and forward deployed deterrent really is an American capability that's given to specific NATO countries to do the operations side of it. How do you see that these changes affecting that, and what would that look like?
Well, I think the extended deterrence mission that the U.S. currently has in European NATO is outdated. I think we have a very limited supply of non-strategic nuclear weapons. I think those would be much more effective to deter Chinese aggression in the Far East and the Western Pacific, where the U.S. has no non-strategic nuclear weapons outside of a few on our Trident II missiles on our Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines. Those are really unusable. If we were to pop off one or two of those, as with the 5 kiloton warhead, the response would be an overwhelming strategic nuclear first strike on the U.S. homeland. And I'm quite confident of that. So really, it would be far wiser for us to deploy those B-61 gravity bombs on our aircraft carriers in the Western Pacific on a permanent basis. So in terms of the extended deterrence mission, I think that could be credibly done by return to slick amends, essentially Tomahawk cruise missiles, on our cruise missile submarines as opposed to our ballistic missile submarines, as well as surface ships, cruisers and destroyers, and perhaps even frigates. I think are more difficult to be nuclear armed, but certainly our Aegis cruisers and destroyers, what few we have left. I think we're down to uh, around 5 cruisers, or a very small number from the 22 that we had when President Biden took over. So I think that's very ill-considered to be unilaterally disarming our U.S. Navy in the face of increasing growth by the Chinese Navy with 3 aircraft carriers and a fleet that's on track to be 50% larger than ours, especially with their massive naval dominance in the Western Pacific.
Yeah, my opinion for quite a while now has been since France has re-entered the military side of the NATO alliance, and they're a nuclear power in and of themselves, and the UK is still a nuclear power, albeit very small, and we maintain their warheads the way I understand it. That gives NATO plenty of nuclear capability from a deterrence perspective, and I agree with you. I think we need to shift the table setting, so to speak, and really get all of our primary strategic capability focused on the big enemy that's out there, and that's China. You know.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And what's great about this national security strategy is Elbridge Colby, before he was picked to be Undersecretary of Defense for Policy back in 2024, he wrote on X, and I'm sure you might recall this as well. He basically, wrote a big long X post, about 20 different sections where he talked about how the time was rapidly coming that the U.S. could assess that a war with China would be unwinnable due to the massive shift in the correlation of forces and the military balance of power in the Western Pacific, due to this massive Chinese, nuclear and conventional buildup that we saw showcased during the military parade on September 3rd in Beijing. Then we would not want to risk our national survival, the destruction of the U.S. homeland, based on a war that we would assess had a very, very low chance of being won. And as I shared with you earlier today, there was a top secret report leaked that's called the Overmatch brief. That essentially concludes that U.S. aircraft carriers would be sunk within minutes by Chinese conventionally armed hypersonic missiles in the event of a war breaking out. And the U.S. military would quickly be crushed in that region, certainly in the South China Sea region, where they have new electronic warfare capabilities that could reportedly blind our U.S. Navy ships and make our aircraft uncontrollable. And they've actually used that to crash one of our, I think, Super Hornets or F-35s, as well as I think a UH-60 or a navalized version of that in the South China Sea.
Yeah, and those have happened not that long ago, David. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll see a little clip. I think it's about the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. But keep in mind, folks, that I'm glad we went there about Operation Overmatch with Mr. Pine, because this strategy really is all about deterring China, and there's nowhere else that it needs to be deterred the most than right here in the Western Hemisphere. We'll be right back with national security expert David Pine.
Do you appreciate all the free programming we produce here at Worldview Tube? Well, if you do, we need your partnership now. If you're already supporting us, thank you. If you're not, would you please consider doing so? We have to have a big November and December end of the year giving. Please go here right now to this website, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You can give through credit card. You can give through PayPal. You'll find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. You'll also find our phone number. Simply use that phone number by leaving a voicemail for Melissa or texting her, and my wife will get back with you and help you make your contribution over the phone. We send out tax receipts with our EIN number, well, the first week of February of each year. We, again, have to have a very big November and December as we get ready for pushing out more Christian worldview programming for 2026. So thank you for going now to worldviewfoundation.com. That's worldviewfoundation.com.
Oh, they're not capable of it. Fortunately, President Trump is, and he just released the new national security strategy for 2025. And for the Western Hemisphere, he's added the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, which says our enemies will suffer and our friends will prosper. So Venezuela is really the first instance where this doctrine and corollary are being put into play. The full might and power of all parts of American strength are being shown to these guys, and Maduro's been told, pack your bags and get out, or you will suffer the consequences. And I think he's going to leave. I think that's being negotiated. And this is going to be a victory for the Trump administration, showing that the Western Hemisphere is no place for other bad actors to think they can play.
Yeah, I mean, Venezuela, communist Venezuela has been abusing America for years. You know, let's talk about the U.S. taking out a 22nd Venezuelan drug boat in the Eastern Pacific. You know, Democrats and media, they've been slamming Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth over this, not talking about how Barack Obama approved 542 drone strikes that killed anywhere from 381 to 816 innocent civilians. The Biden administration mistakenly droned 10 Afghanistan civilians, including seven children. So where's the discussion about that?
Well, let's have it right now. I think the thing we need to basically focus on is the commander-in-chief has the right to protect the United States using all facets of military strength or other power. So the right of the president to designate the Secretary of War to blow up drug boats is not really in question by people who understand how the Constitution works. The question now becomes, is that good policy? And as part of the previously mentioned Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, this is the iron fist inside the velvet glove. There's a lot of diplomacy going on with Secretary of State Rubio behind the scenes, and deals are going to be made. But that threat and that 90,000 tons of carrier diplomacy is how you get things done.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest is National Security Strategist David Pine. And David, we touched briefly on this new Monroe Doctrine, reimplementation and modification. And a big part of the entire NSS this time has to do with non-military power, economic power especially, and this phrase that we seem to have forgotten about in the Western world of capitalism, prosperity. Prosperity overtakes the desire to go to war with each other, or it should, and I think that's where this president is taking the country and our allies to, as we rebuild our strength to deter China and get control of our own backyard again, like we used to have, and keep those players like China, Iran, Russia from gaining power and establishing a foothold in the Western Hemisphere. Am I right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What makes this national security strategy so revolutionary is it returns to the Cold War, clear-eyed Cold War realism of the Reagan administration. This is a policy of peace through strength that does emphasize not only military strength but also diplomacy. And I've been saying that diplomacy really is a force multiplier in a world where the U.S. is overmatched by the Sino-Russian alliance in terms of strategic nuclear weapons, theater nuclear weapons, conventional military forces, with China having the largest army, navy, air force, Coast Guard, ballistic missile, nuclear-capable ballistic missile forces. And in terms of military industrial power, I think perhaps defense industrial base potentially 5 to 6 times larger than ours. You have to use diplomacy to negotiate your way out of potential, existential threats in terms of direct wars with Russia or China over Ukraine or Taiwan. And so I think, despite I think that the fact that this national security strategy does not describe China as an enemy or an adversary. It talks about China as a mere economic competitor that we need to deter in the Pacific. clearly the language is toned down with China, and I think, with Russia, the strategy talks about the need for strategic stability. We know there's, trillion-dollar deals that are being planned, or multi-trillion-dollar deals being planned in terms of energy and rare earth cooperation between the U.S. and Russia once the Ukraine war is settled, and it's far from being settled, unfortunately, due to the fact that the Trump administration is refusing to negotiate directly with Russia and is instead wasting time with negotiating, provisions with Ukraine and our EU partners. But with regards to China, the focus is, mutually beneficial trade, reciprocal trade deals, cooperation. Not in terms of economic, but in terms of potentially resolving conflicts through diplomacy, likely including the Taiwan issue. I think the issuance of this strategy, which both Russia and China have praised. China is saying that this is the most favorable national security strategy that's been published since the 2010 Obama document that talked about seeking partnerships with Russia and China. It's not so much that it's favorable to our adversaries; it's favorable to America first. It puts our national security interest, which is the most fundamental, and it spells this out that it's America's national survival is our fundamental national security interest. It's not fighting forever wars. It's not pretending that the entire world, with the exception of the Sino-Russian alliance, is a gigantic U.S. sphere of influence that torpedoes, abandons our previous strategy of global hegemony that was active right through the end of the Biden administration, and replaces it with what it refers to as flexible realism. So I think it's a very positive change. I think it's one that's likely to help us avert World War III. My main concern is, will the Trump administration actually execute it to it? Certainly, they're doing so with regards to Venezuela, but in terms of ending the war in Ukraine, I think we're very far from seeing that happen.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think? I don't know that it's the president himself that's allowing this, because the team around him thinks the way this document is written, and I know, and I've observed him for a while and listened to him, that it's written the way he thinks too, about how America should be in the world with our allies and our adversaries, which is really one of the adversaries should have in their minds that they don't want to take the risk to attack us or our vital national interest, or kill Americans and those kind of things, because our response will be overwhelming, which I think this president has demonstrated that, all the way back to the Soleimani attack, where he killed the IRGC commander in Iraq while he was visiting there. I mean, he's proven that the devastating responses will occur if you attack us or if you threaten us in an unwarranted way, especially. But he also works with the economic side of the power very effectively. The Abraham Accords, I think, is a good example of that. But we still have this situation where the United States is being told that we have to care where the line of the border between Ukraine and Russia is. It's not a vital interest. Barack Obama even.
Yeah,
So what's the holdup?
Well, it's absurd. You're absolutely right. President Trump has made crystal clear to Zelensky that he wants Zelensky to accept the Russian demand that to withdraw Ukrainian forces from the remainder of the Donbass region, just 20% of Donetsk Oblast, which is I think about 11% of the total Donbass region. It's about 1% of Ukraine's internationally recognized territory. Now, granted, it is considered a vital region in terms of their fortified defensive belt. But really, if Russia wanted to, let's just be frank here. At the onset of the war, within days or a few weeks, Russia, a massive Russian armored blitzkrieg took over 27% of Ukraine's territory, much more than they have today, and surrounded Kyiv from two different sides within getting to within just 5 miles of the city border, city limits, with the day after the invasion began, and 2 miles before they were withdrawn on the orders of President Putin, who believed that the signing of the Istanbul Agreement was imminent, in which Russia had committed to withdraw all of its troops from pre-war Ukraine in exchange for Ukrainian permanent neutrality outside of NATO and a large-scale partial demilitarization. So that, currently the balance of forces, and this is something that's not discussed almost on any other program, is that the current balance of forces is what General Syrski stated, that Russia has 3 times more troops in Ukraine than Ukraine has active duty troops deployed today. So that was stated back in early September. By my estimates, Russia now has about 690,000 troops, whereas Ukraine is likely down to about 185,000 troops. So as you see, and that's about 3.7 times more troops in terms of a force disparity. So, if Russia wanted to, they could just send about 200,000 troops to Belarus, invade again Kyiv Oblast, and surround Kyiv, and Zelensky would be forced to surrender conditionally, and he would likely flee the country. So, it's a testament to President Vladimir Putin of Russia's strategic forbearance that for whatever reason he's chosen not to do that. Because if the situation were reversed and the U.S. were prosecuting the war, we would have done that. We wouldn't have withdrawn our troops at the onset of the war. We would have kept our troops surrounding the capital until the enemy had surrendered, and then we would have pulled our troops out and having with our mission accomplished and our conditions being met. So it's strange to me that Putin has had the ability to force Ukraine's surrender and could have done so in April of 2022. But it has not done so. He's wanted to whittle down and essentially bleed Ukraine's army dry, so that just 3 years ago, November of 2022, they had 1.2 million men under arms, and today it's certainly less than 200,000.
Wow, a lot of them left the country too, haven't they? Them and their families escaped and went to other places because they didn't want to die in that meat grinder. Their population overall is reduced so much that they really can't field a force that's capable of kicking the Russian army out of all the parts of the territory, can they?
No, they can't, and that's what's so funny about the 28-point peace plan that President Trump issued, which I thought was overall quite good and likely acceptable to Russia in terms of 25 to 28 points. It talked about capping the Ukrainian army at 600,000 troops. Well, they can't even field 200,000 active duty troops today. My thinking is that needs to be clarified, and you simply say a maximum of 200,000 active duty troops, and then 400,000 or even 600,000 reserve troops. And I think Russia could accept that. But instead, we live in a fantasy world, where Ukraine doesn't have enough infantry to defend the most critical sections of the front. They've got like 3 to 8 troops per kilometer in the most vital Donbass region, and yet they're claiming that their army is. Zelensky's claiming this, not Syrski. Syrski's telling the truth, but Zelensky is claiming that the size of the Ukrainian army is far in excess of the Russian troops in Ukraine. And were that the case, Ukraine would be, preventing Russia from seizing any territory and, exacting massive casualties, instead of what I've estimated is a casualty ratio that favors Russia by about 5.7 to 1.
Yeah. We got to take another break. When we come back, we'll see a little clip diving deeper into this European and NATO issue, and bring in the Islamization of Europe and the United Kingdom as part of the building threat that we need to be paying attention to. We'll be right back with David Pine.
man who redefined Islamic thinking for the modern Muslim Brotherhood is Yusuf al-Qaradawi. Unlike Qutb, Qaradawi believed Islam would conquer Europe, not through the sword, but through dawah and population. To support this vision, he founded Fiqh al-Aqaliyat, a doctrine that allows Muslim minorities to adapt to Western societies while upholding their faith, with flexible rulings on matters of modesty, food, courts, and elections. The goal of integration into Western society is not to advance the country in which they live, but to seize positions of power, to spread Islam globally. Qaradawi's doctrine is essentially the way Qatar can influence the West, which is why it has adopted him and promoted him to be the most influential Muslim religious entity. Qaradawi publicly supported Hamas and suicide bombings. He called their perpetrators martyrs and praised their actions. As a Western, you should know that any Muslim backing Palestine is backing Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood's armed wing. Palestine died with Arafat in 2004. Since then, it's been a Muslim cause, not a nationalist one, which makes Palestine a real threat far beyond Israel's borders. That's why Jordan banned the Brotherhood after October 7th, and Egypt built huge fences around Gaza. They know who they're dealing with. Meanwhile, in New York, there's a mayoral candidate who operates on Qaradawi's method of full integration, even with values contrary to Islam, but for the sake of Islam. It doesn't matter if he is a Shiite, an agnostic like Cenk, or an atheist like Hassan Piker. Qatari money speaks to everyone. Qaradawi's jihad thrives best among progressives, who serve as its final line of defense and help sustain Qatar's influence in the West.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and my guest today is David Pine, and we're talking about the new national security strategy, which takes a unique look at Europe and NATO. That little film right there, considering the attacks that have been ongoing by Islamists around the world now, including here in this country, and the planned attacks that might have been disrupted here in Los Angeles just yesterday, where they arrested several jihadi operatives that were planning bombing attacks on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day across the city. And there will be more of that, especially if we don't pay attention. But David, I wanted to show that to get into the discussion about the concerns about Europe, and one of the reasons why this NSS treats Europe like it does. I think it mentions something that they have minority governments that are using tyrannical rules like suppressing free speech in order to try to keep and stay in power, which obviously is antithetical to democracy, any Republican form of democracy government like ours, and capitalism and freedom and those kind of things. All the while, their populations are shifting because of the people that they've allowed to come in, both legally and illegally, from the Middle East.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that in terms of the Romanian elections, where they essentially canceled the first presidential election in Romania because a hardline conservative nationalist like Trump won the most votes, and he was essentially banned from social media and prevented from running, and they elected someone who was less conservative and much more pro-NATO. The first candidate was essentially anti-Ukraine war. This one is kind of a bridge between the establishment and real conservatives, the one that was elected. And then, of course, in Germany, the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, is a mainstream conservative nationalist party that now enjoys the most popularity. If the election were held today, they would clearly win. But they've been treated as if there's some kind of terrorist, extremist, or even neo-Nazi movement, which is absurd. I think there was maybe one of their representatives had some kind of affinity for something far-right ideology, and they were condemned essentially. So really, the AfD I view as simply a Trump Republican Party. That's really German. It's really Germany's only conservative party. Christian Democrats are not really conservative. They've always been centrist. Germany really hasn't had a conservative party since before the Nazi era. Obviously, the Nazis were vile leftists, Marxists essentially, that we're totalitarian. But in terms of conservatives, it's really been that long since they've had a conservative party. So I think this new Trump national security strategy, it makes it clear that, we've had our elections interfered with. Britain, the British Labour Party sent 100 election specialists to help electioneer Kamala Harris's victory over Trump. That failed, thankfully, and I think one of the folks that they dispatched was the current UK ambassador to the United States, and I was frankly surprised that Trump didn't refuse to his credentials because he was really a disgrace, an anti-Trump disgrace. So I think we're, basically what it says is we're going to get involved in European elections, and we're going to support, maybe not through electioneering, but in terms of Trump endorsing nationalist conservative candidates across Europe. I think it's a great idea, and I don't see any problems with it. Certainly, the fact that Europe has interfered with our elections and taken sides. We certainly have that right, and we should be very actively engaged in supporting Trump-like candidates, nationalist conservatives across the EU as well.
Yeah. Well, we got a question in the audience. Let's go ahead and take that real quick. Shell, go ahead.
We have AJ, sir.
Thank you, Shell. Thank you, Colonel, sir. Mr. Pine, it's a pleasure, as always. My question is, do you expect China to have a different relationship with members of BRICS as a result of this new national security strategy, given the fact that the letter B in BRICS stands for Brazil, and Brazil is in the Western Hemisphere, and they are not foreign to helping Islamic organizations, nor are they new to drug money or illegal weapons distribution and sales. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Well, it's a great question. I actually used to live, I served a 2-year mission for my church in Brazil during the late 1980s. And the current president, essentially he's a Marxist. He ran as a Communist Front candidate and his name is Lula da Silva. And he was, there was a joke in 1989, it was the fall of the Berlin Wall that we witnessed that November of that year. And that pretty much coincided, I think it was October, for the Brazilian presidential election. And thankfully, Lula lost. But the joke was if Lula had won, Brazilians would have to jump the wall because, Brazil would have to erect a wall to keep Brazilians in from fleeing the country from Marxist rule. We haven't really seen that happen, but this is his second term as president. He's very staunchly pro-Russia and pro-Chinese, communist Chinese. So he's very much aligned in terms of BRICS and across the board with America's enemies. So I don't see China's relationship with BRICS countries changing unless Trump succeeds. And this is really what I think that Trump is hoping to accomplish. He wants to take the R&I out of BRICS, and that's something I discussed as Vivek Ramaswamy's defense and foreign policy advisor, is that we eviscerate BRICS by taking Russia and India out. India is the most populous country in the world with the third largest economy. Russia's its population is just 43% of ours, but it has the fourth largest economy. But together, if we were, one of the most powerful militaries, arguably probably the second most powerful military in the world that Russia has, and India's got actually the second largest army. So if we were to pull those countries out of Beijing's orbit, there's really nothing more effective we could do to weaken China, in my opinion, than to disrupt or neutralize their alliances with Russia and India. With India, of course, it's much more nuanced, but with Russia, it's a no limits partnership, as was declared at the Beijing Olympics back in February of 2022.
Yeah, so let's see. The right-wing candidate was just elected where, in Chile yesterday?
Chile.
In a landslide?
Yep.
What impact do you see that happening on dampening down the Lula government's ability to have influence in the Western Hemisphere from a Marxist point of view?
Well, I just shared a map with a lot of our colleagues, and perhaps you were on the list as well. But the map shows there's an organization called the Forum of de Sao Paulo, and that is an organization that was really pioneered by Lula. It's a transnational organization that includes leftists across Central and South America. And if you look at a map, the map that I sent, and I'll share this with you after maybe the next break, it shows that. Leftists govern almost every major country in Latin America, both Central and South America, including Brazil, Argentina, obviously Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba, many more countries. I think Paraguay and Ecuador as well. So this victory in Chile is a big victory, but it's they're surrounded by Marxist and leftist-led countries. So it's a sea of red, essentially, a sea of red that we see in our own backyard. And if there's a place to interfere in elections, it's more important to interfere in elections in Latin America than it is in Europe, because there's just so many socialist and Marxist countries down there that are in China's orbit. And the U.S. has really, taken the focus away from what should be our primary focus in securing the hemisphere from foreign influence, especially from Russia and China.
Oh, yeah, and everybody should know by now that the digital voting machines that are all over the place in this hemisphere have Chinese coding, Chinese parts, and it's been proven that the Chinese coding can be manipulated through the Connect case out on the west coast of the United States here. So lots of room for improvement in the Western Hemisphere. We got to take our last break. When we come back, we'll see a little clip from Brent Sadler, who's a maritime expert, Navy, U.S. Navy. I want to shift this discussion to China itself, deterring them, what capability we need to have that we don't have. And the primary one really is a Navy big enough to control the logistics and fight the war if we ever had to, God forbid, go to a global war with China beyond just the Pacific Rim. We'll be right back.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
It's a new Cold War, not of America's choosing. And I always point people back to the Tiananmen Papers that were snuck out of Beijing that made it very clear when the bodies were still warm in the square after the massacre in June of 1989 that the Chinese Communist Party viewed the United States as enemy number one. And that hasn't changed. And with that lens and that understanding, and if you haven't seen those papers, I encourage you to go read those. You can still find them, and you can still get it offline in books that have been published based on it. You have to reorganize for task. I'll talk a little bit more. There's a whole section of the new book that talks about this. A new National Security Council. Very slim and to purpose, about executing rather than managing the interagency. A maritime department that takes all of the disparate agencies that are involved in shipping, shipbuilding, and our maritime security into one department. Making an exception, of course, for the U.S. Navy, which is a warfighting, which would stay in the Department of War. Make sure I caveat that. And then also reorganizing the Navy. One centered on fleets, one that makes sense based on the nature of the maritimes, the shipping routes, the cultures that are connected in places like the Indian Ocean, which right now has 3 different numbered fleets, 3 different geographic combatant commands. They are not up to the challenges of the day, and certainly not to the new Cold War that we are confronting with the Chinese Communist Party.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's World War Monday. We're discussing the new 2025 national security strategy of the Trump administration, shepherded through the process by Undersecretary of War for Policy Elbridge Colby. He wrote the last one in the last administration, and now has shepherded this one through to publication to get it out there. And it does shift the national security strategic focus to deterring China. And that was Brent Sadler, U.S. Navy retired officer. Unfortunately, was going to be an appointee in the Trump administration to help with ship manufacturing increasing and those kinds of things that you heard him talking about there. But his appointment was canceled for some reason, unknown to everybody except maybe him and whoever did the canceling of it. It's unfortunate because the United States needs men like Mr. Sadler in the administration to be able to get this job done. And the job of deterring China, my guest is David Pine today. David, you cannot deter China as the United States of America and our allies without a Navy and a maritime capability of sea lift that is capable of controlling the Pacific Ocean and the lines of communication and logistics that have to be controlled. You have to have a big Navy, you have to have a big sea lift capability, and you have to have an integral, at-home shipbuilding capability to keep it up, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are massively overmatched as it stands today with China. You know, they have the capability, according to a top secret report that was leaked early last year, to produce 232 times more ships than the U.S. You know, as I mentioned, you know, overall, I think their defense industrial base is about 5 to 6 times larger in terms of producing missiles, hypersonic missiles, you know, nuclear, conventional, ICBMs, IRBMs, MRBMs, right down the line. So, especially anti-ship missiles of the kind that could sink U.S. aircraft carriers within minutes of the commencement of a direct war between the U.S. and China, as the Overmatch report revealed. So, there's much we need to do, you know, in terms of merchant marine ships. We're outnumbered by China 63 times to 1, and Taiwan is about 85 times closer to mainland China than it is the Pacific West Coast. So, you know, in terms of supplying our warships, we're trying to work hard to restore our ability to rearm at sea. Currently, I think we've lost that capability. We're trying, we would have to, you know, for bases in Japan and Australia, you know, and other locations, the Philippines were hit. We'd have to sail our ships back to Pearl Harbor, and the return trip, I think both ways, would be about 2 weeks. So they'd be out of commission for 2 weeks. Of course, we'd run out of munitions. Long-range precision strike munitions would be gone with after 7 days of intense combat operations, according to multiple U.S. intel reports.
And that's just for Taiwan, for a Taiwan fight, right?
Well, it's for any fight, but for Taiwan, specifically the South China Sea. You know, in terms of any intense combat operations, whether it's the Philippines or Japan, or even South Korea, you know, we would run out of you know, standard missiles in terms of SM-3s and 6s to shoot down incoming missiles and aircraft, as well as you know, Tomahawks. To try to strike anti-ship missiles, of course, to strike enemy ships and land targets within 7 days. So, and then overall, you know, just maybe a week or more. So once we run out of those munitions, our ships would be sitting ducks, and certainly within the second island chain, they would be sunk essentially within days. And so my strategy, which I call the assured national survival strategy, would you know, secure the second Pacific Island chain. This strategy focuses on the forward deployed strategy of the first island chain. But realistically, you know, Elbridge Colby understands that, and President Trump as well understands that a war with China over Taiwan would be unwinnable. And I think the issuance of this strategy, I think it significantly decreases the chances that China will invade Taiwan. I think they'll Instead, if we don't come to some kind of negotiated settlement on the Taiwan issue by 2027, I would anticipate a blockade or so-called quarantine, as they would call it. And this would essentially be, cutting off Taiwan from the U.S., from the Western world, and preventing that in terms of a joint air and naval blockade. And then they would issue an ultimatum. The ultimatum would be, this is your last chance for peaceful reunification on Chinese terms, which would be pretty clear annexation outright versus, the plan that I've discussed with you on previous shows, which would be a kind of a EU-style confederation agreement, which Taiwan would get to preserve its sovereignty, essentially self-rule, its control of its military. There wouldn't be any Chinese military presence except for one naval base on a peninsula on the far south. So that, I think, would be much more preferable in terms of the U.S. negotiating something like that instead of waiting for what I think is an inevitable blockade, which is likely to occur just within the next year or two, which would see Taiwan go completely red.
Do you see there was reporting in the last couple of days that we have released NVIDIA chips to China? And do you see that as kind of complicating the issue and contradictory to this national security strategy?
Well, I think it is contradictory because, the interesting part is our NVIDIA chips are high technology to us, but China rejected them because they have other sources and perhaps Taiwan, other more advanced microchip sources, and they don't want to be dependent on the U.S. Wouldn't it have been great if, if the U.S. had refused Chinese motherboards? According to one of my DHS colleagues within the EMP task force, she worked in the Department of Homeland Security, and she had intel, and this is open source, obviously, that almost every, weapon that we have in our military has Chinese motherboards that are potentially hackable to turn off the weapon system, or, in some cases even potentially use those weapon systems or reroute them against U.S. targets. So it wouldn't have been great if we had refused any Chinese parts or computers, microchips or motherboards within U.S. weapon systems. I think China is pursuing a much more wiser strategy to reject NVIDIA chips, the U.S.-made microchips, in terms of their military and even the civilian side than we've done. But I disagreed vehemently with Trump's decision to sell those NVIDIA microchips to China, because I think it has the potential, dual-use military applications to strengthen their military.
Yeah, it certainly surprises me. The only thing I can think of is that I just am not smart enough to see where he's going with that, I guess. But I've been observing him for a long time, and it's not making sense yet. We'll keep an eye on that. So go through this overmatch brief before we get to the end of the show, and just lay it out for folks, and then match it up to what you're seeing with things like chip manufacturing and technology increases and intellectual property recapture or re-stealing it. Those kind of things, the things that need to be done to overcome the overmatch that this briefing exposes.
Yeah, the overmatch briefing, we really don't have the full brief, so it's just kind of a top level, analysis that we received from multiple sources. The UK Telegraph, the Daily Mail, and other sources reported on it. But essentially, the overmatch brief appears to be a U.S. intel report, likely published in the first few months issued to the president in the first few months of the Trump administration, to assess the correlation of forces, of the balance of forces between the U.S. and China, if indeed a direct war with China were to break out. The findings were pretty sobering. Again, determining that we would lose the war essentially within the first few hours of the war, with our carriers potentially being sunk in the first within minutes, and that could mean 30 minutes, it could 60 minutes, but it could also mean 5 or 10 minutes. where any of our carriers in the second island chain would be in range of being sunk by this massive amount of, massive arsenal of Chinese conventional and nuclear hypersonic missiles that they showcased at their military parade, in which 76, out of 76 weapon systems showcased, I think about 46 were brand new or first deployed in 2024. So they've showcased a tremendous capability, essentially a U.S. World War II scale capability, where they have completely converted their economy to a wartime economy, mass producing weapon systems, and that occurred almost 4 years ago. 3.5 years ago was leaked by Lewd Media. J.R. Nyquist, another one of our colleagues, reported on that, I think, in May of 2022. So that's been ongoing, and we've seen the fruits of that. Some of our weapon systems, like the Sentinel ICBM, we can't even produce in 20 years. I think that was think started under the Obama administration, and now we'll be lucky to have that operationally deployed initially by 2030. So we have a lot of catching up to do. It's not just naval; it's missile systems, drone systems, AI systems, quantum computing. Just in terms of theater nuclear, I think we need to have a theater nuclear capability in the Western Pacific. That I think is more key than even conventional naval forces. So I would love to see Trump take action on that one.
Absolutely right. Yeah, increasing manufacturing capability across the board, not defense industry, but increasing it altogether. So we're at a starting point, at least, of where we were at pre-World War II, with the ability to have civilian manufacturing in large quantities that could be converted on the ideas of those people that are running those and owners of those factories. David, it's just incredible where we've allowed ourselves to be drawn, so that it's questionable whether we can actually deter a country like China at this point, let alone defeat them if we have to. Well, thanks for coming on today. I appreciate it. Short notice, great discussion, great analysis as usual. And tomorrow, folks, you can follow David Pine at America First Con on X, and he's got a Substack too. Just check it out. And tomorrow, Todd Wood, CEO of CDM Press, he is a credentialed Pentagon Press Corps reporter now, and his team are working out of there every day. And we're going to get the story about the big media week from Todd and his team tomorrow, right here on Worldview Tube.
We have a big announcement, folks, something we've been waiting on for several months, and it's now here. It's called Bella Melt. You were on it for just 1 week when you lost 3 pounds. So in the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's the satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. It's a sugar-free, fast melt caramel. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria